Welcome to Access Spotlight. I'm Travis Youssef. Today I have the honor of sitting down with Lieutenant Colonel retired Thomas Ludwig. Tom is a common sense Republican resident who is running to be the next U.S. representative of New York's 3rd Congressional District. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to have you today.
Thank you. It's a great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're really welcome. So let's just get right into it. So now I know your website states that you and your family have been on Long Island for 3 generations. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So I grew up in Levittown. I went to Division Avenue High School. My father's from Huntington and my mother's from Hicksville. So, grew up here my entire life. Mm-hmm. Lived on Long Island until 1998. And once I went away to college, then, I was kind of gone overseas for a while, which I know we'll get into. But, just moved back here recently after 25 years. I would always visit. My friends and family were here. So, I'd always be here a couple times a year. But it's good to be back. And then, it was a great place to grow up. Levittown, it was the first, mass-produced suburb after World War II. So it's interesting. Living all over the country, people recognize it. But I think Long Island's a great place to live, and that's why I wanted to move back here and hopefully represent people leadership-wise here. Yeah,
no, absolutely, Tom. So you mentioned that you've been gone for a little while. So talk to us a little bit about the last 25 years for you.
Okay. So after I graduated Division Avenue High School, then I went to Nassau Community College. I got my associates there. Then I went to Northeastern University in Boston, and I did ROTC there.
Awesome.
So when I graduated in June of 2001, I was commissioned as an Army infantry officer. So I started my Army career just a couple months before 9/11. So I spent essentially my entire career at war. I just retired in January. So it was interesting. So I was commissioned as an Army infantry officer. I started at Fort Bragg. I did Ranger School, the initial training, and then I was stationed in South Korea because before 9/11, South Korea was kind of the place to go. But excellent first assignment just because, to live in Asia, live overseas, but, the terrain and the weather there, and it's a good place to, what we say in like the Army, kind of like the baseline of misery. So you have Ranger School, and then you need to be kind of like freezing and cold and hungry to kind of get that. So I think that certainly prepared me well for Iraq. So I deployed from Korea to Iraq. We were the first unit ever deployed with the 1st and 503rd Infantry. Wow. So, went to Iraq, which was interesting. So I was in several firefights there, but, great people. And it was interesting because, Iraq is kind of an urban area. And when I fought later on in Afghanistan, which was very rural. So I was in Ramadi in Iraq, fought, and then after that deployment, I was picked up for Special Forces Assessment and Selection. So I went through Special Forces training, which was about 18 months. So I was an 18 Alpha, which is a Special Forces officer. Okay. Then I was assigned to 7 Special Forces Group, which their focus is on South America. So I'd also fight in Afghanistan, but if not, we'd be in South America. So my first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2007, so that was interesting. Got a Bronze Star there, came back, and then I did what we call a JSET, a Joint Combined Exchange Training in Nicaragua. We were the first team in Nicaragua in, I think, like 10 years. Wow. So did that, then did another Afghanistan rotation. That one was a little more difficult. We did what we call like a village stability operation type thing, where we went to a town in Cochraz, which kind of never been there before. Like, here's your Army unit, and then I had to meet all the village elders. So it was interesting because you come in as the outside force. They're all distrustful for you. You have to kind of, establish rapport and then security. It's kind of the first, kind of like any government thing. First thing security, and then you interact with the people. You find out what they need. So it was interesting because we would fight, but then we also set up medical clinics. We'd give clothes to the kids, set up schools. So that was good. Like the first ever school. Sometimes these little girls, the first time they ever went to school was because we helped establish that. So so that was interesting. After the second Afghanistan rotation, came back. I actually got an SF company as a captain, which is rare. Got those guys prepared for Colombia, but then gave it up. I had to change command. Then I did a year with Special Forces Command, working on kind of unconventional warfare stuff. And it was actually funny where I know some people were talking about Obama was like they were worried about like martial law and this Texas thing. It was actually an exercise like I actually helped plan years earlier, and it was just funny kind of seeing stuff how it played out. But it's all by, with, and through. So it was all like an unconventional warfare exercise. So that was good. And then after that, I went to the Naval Postgraduate School in California. So I got a master's in defense analysis of regular warfare.
Awesome.
At that time, I also did another master's online at Webster University, Business and Organizational Security Management. So I don't recommend doing 2 separate masters at one point. So I learned that lesson. But, you know, California was outstanding. You know, the great thesis advisor. Everybody there. So I did a program, even though it's a naval postgraduate school, it's all for special ops, so like Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Civil Affairs, and PSYOPs. So that was a great program because everybody there was overseas. Everybody had the experience, you know, very knowledgeable. So that was good. After that, I returned back to the 7th Special Forces Group, where I was a company commander. So that was great. I had 2 deployments as a company commander. The first one, I had mission command of all special operations in Central America. So that was outstanding. So I was based at Honduras, but I got to work with ambassadors, the 3-letter agencies, and then each country. So in Honduras, they asked us to, their president actually asked us to help stand up a unit, because at the time they had one of the highest murder rates in the world. They had a lot of issues with cartels. So the U.S. forces and the Colombians trained the Tigres up, and then once they graduated, it was, you know, it was pretty big pomp and fanfare. So then we started what we call confidence targets. So we would help them set up the target, and then the Hondurans would execute it, and then we would help process like the intelligence off of it. And so we did confidence targets where they would hit these, you know, cartels or gang groups, and then that's when I kind of learned where, although they're violent, if you put any sort of tactical military stuff against them, these cartels and stuff get overwhelmed. So the Hondurans, the Tigres, were producing staggering results. Where I remember I was writing my sit reps, and my boss is like, "Really? Is this?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is what they're doing." And it's like, so at least when I left, you know, the ambassador and the Hondurans were very happy. And then, you know, we were in Belize and Guatemala. So each country. So the way special forces work, each country would tell us what they want. They're like, "Hey, drugs are a problem, or we need port security, or the Army needs training here," so that, you know, we would work with them there. So, you know, special force kind of force multiply. We would work with armies from different countries or police units, and then we make them better, and then kind of give them the resources or the guidance they need. Great. So that was outstanding, you know. And there, you know, I had a lot of resources. I had like my own Cessna, and the guys just did an extraordinary job. And then I was lucky enough to get a second deployment where I was Colombia and Peru. So Colombia was great, you know, a little more bureaucratic because we've been there since like Pablo Escobar and stuff. But Colombians are fantastic force, you know, militarily, very, very professional. We've been working, the 7th Special Forces have been working with them for decades. So that was great. After I left my company command, I got a 1-year interagency fellowship with the U.S. Marshals. So that was good. So there I helped developing strategy. They have 13 divisions, and then they kind of helped. I with another unit with working with some Mexico stuff. So that was a great opportunity. And then after the year with the Marshals, I was in Europe for 3 years. I worked counter Russia aggression, sensitive activities. So that was interesting. I got to study Russia quite a bit. Where, you know, now with the whole Ukraine thing that's going on now, you know, I studied it where they annexed parts of Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova prior to that. Hybrid warfare, studied very, very clever strategy. And I know certainly how Ukraine is played out now, you know, I'll get into that later, is not, you know, the conflict is not how I would envisioned, because now it's essentially like World War I now. Especially you being an expert in strategy. So yeah, so it's strategy because, like, I know for a fact Putin, you know, he was told 72 hours they would win. You know, they with the hybrid warfare, they were very successful at other parts, you know, annexing stuff. And then we kind of called out the disinformation, and they built up the armor. And then when they invaded, it just, you know, it turned out different than I thought. So like right now, the front line is about 740 miles long. The way the Russians fight, because of like World War I and World War II, like it's just mined and stuff now. Now there's drones. So like, you know, the problem now with, you know, we've been arming Ukraine for a while since the conflict started, which I agree with, and they need. 'Cause they were attacked. They're fighting for their survival. It's an existential threat. But they're to the point now where the counteroffensive didn't accomplish as much as we thought, and just with the front lines being extended, so principles of war like mass maneuver, really that can't be done right now. So I think we need to keep supporting Ukraine, but push for a diplomatic solution quickly, especially as Israel and stuff like that. So the United States, we're the beacon of hope for the world, but we don't want to be bankrolling several wars. Yeah. But so that was interesting. So and I'll talk about that more. So after the 3 years in Europe, then I did my third Afghanistan rotation. So I worked for the 4-star general there. So it was interesting. My first 2 Afghanistan, I was in the fight leading troops, and then this time I was working for the highest level leadership. But I learned a lot of strategy. I kind of learned what was going on, and then I left there just before the withdrawal started. And then my last assignment was then after that Afghanistan, then I was at Special Operations Command Central for a year. I helped the Qataris prepare for the World Cup in Qatar, which was interesting. And then my last job in the Army was as a strategic director for Special Operations Command, where we'd focus on special forces use in great power competition. So I was focused on China, Russia, and Iran. So it was, it was an interesting run. So yeah, started just before September 11th, 7 deployments total, 3 combat, 1 Iraq, 3 Afghanistan, 3 South America. Lived in Asia, Europe and South America, and then grad school. So for me, it was an interesting thing where, I was where I needed to be when 9/11 went. And I'm glad when the war started, I was at the tactical level to learn, because now I feel like I'm a better strategist. Where, if a strategist hasn't really fought on the ground, or if he doesn't know like the logistics requirements and medical stuff, to me, I just think they're at a disadvantage, because it's nice to say things, but you have to identify with the people on the ground actually doing the fighting.
Yeah. Well, let me just say thank you for your service, Tom. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure the people that you interacted with and helped, you built a community essentially, for them. Do you think that this was kind of a natural progression to get into politics? Because are you the first one in your family?
So nobody in my family has been in politics. Did not grow up in a political household. So. My last master's was public administration at Harvard, but I only started studying that because I really felt the country's in decline internationally and domestically. So for me, I actually first thought about politics when I was in command in Colombia. Tim Kaine actually came to visit. So he's a senator. He was actually going to be Hillary's vice president.
Yep.
And although a good guy, so he came in and he's like, "Oh, I'm very supportive of the military and foreign policy. I've done these committees," and he goes on and on and on. But then his first question he asked me in front of the guys basically lost all credibility. So he was just like, so I was Special Forces Ranger Airborne, the Tower of Power. So he asked, he's like, "That airborne tab, does that mean you fly helicopters?" Which anybody who's been in the Army that knows, like, you jump out of a plane. So so that was one thing. That was my first interaction with like a senator. But then once I found out like he was gonna like be vice president, I was kind of scared for this country, where I'm like, and then I've met many other congressmen and senators where, although they're good people, like their leadership wise, I was not confident. But then I thought about it, and then once Santos was the district, the stars kind of aligned. I'm like, so I can help the country that I feel is declining, like internationally, because I feel like I'm a foreign policy and national security expert.
Yeah.
And then domestically, just through the leadership. And then, to me, it's an honor to come back home and to represent where I'm from, my friends and family, my neighbors. And, it's Long Island, it should be a very influential district. And essentially, because of Santos, there's been no representation, no committee. So. Yeah. I just feel like I owe it to my friends and family. I have the skill set, the knowledge that, really I just want to help, the country and the district.
And the community. That's what it's about. And I love what your website says, that he's determined to make sure our district remains a great place to raise a family, start a business, and realize the American dream?
Yeah, so it's as a third generation, Long Islander, and I don't have a family yet. My brother and sister, they do, just because the military, but I plan to. But yeah, I mean, with the inflation and the cost of living, it's just tough. So I mean, and then like the crime and migration. So it's, I just want to set the conditions for people to succeed, where make sure they're represented, not kind of hamstring them, but really just provide the leadership and just listen to everybody, like the psychology. So, one thing, having lived all over the country and overseas, my perspective, I think, is sound. The Army tends to be more right-wing. Harvard's very left, so I understand all the arguments. And then just, now it's interesting. I enjoy talking to Long Islanders to see how they view things, because, Long Islanders, New Yorkers kind of have their own, we're a different type of, animal or perspective.
Breed,
so it's interesting. So,
sure.
Especially, a suburb of New York, when that's your first city, kind of throws off your perspective. But, I really feel like Long Island is a great place to grow up, and I want to make sure it stays that way. And then, certainly the business and economic aspect, and make sure, people can flourish and afford homes and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Tom. And talk to us a little bit about, I know you have a couple of issues that you mentioned on the website that you just mentioned yourself. The migrant issue, as well as migrant crisis, economy, to the failure of law and order. Talk to us about each one of those.
Okay, so I know everybody has their own issues, and for me, for 2 decades it was foreign policy because I was overseas. Sure. But now it's more of like the failure of leadership, and my first thing is just to provide the leadership and trust. So I think Santos, with his lying and just with his other stuff now, where the Botox and OnlyFans, how he took like campaign funds, like that's completely unacceptable. So I understand he wasn't convicted of a crime, but New Yorkers deserve the representation. So my first thing is just the leadership aspect, and I'm very confident in leadership and to get things done. But then talking to the people. So obviously inflation, cost of living is it affects everybody.
Yeah.
And then the crime. I know there's a lot of issues with the migrant crisis in the city. Long Islanders are very they certainly don't want that here. And then there's also the humanitarian aspect of that. But it's. Yeah. So I would say, inflation, cost of living, migration, they seem to be the biggest things on New York. But then, I certainly, try to listen, about everybody's issues and stuff like that. So, national security and foreign policy, I have a firm grasp, and now it's, the leadership aspect is there, and it's really just, it's not necessarily what I want, it's what the people want.
Yeah.
And, so far what I want and the people want is the same thing. And it's just, to be represented, not to be held back, and, be able to flourish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, let's go back a little bit, because I kind of lost count a little bit on the degrees. Is it 5 degrees in total that you have?
So I have 5 degrees, 2 grad certificates, and like 8 professional certificates. So I started at Nassau Community College, and I've worked my way up to Harvard. So it's, I always joke where I actually had a lower GPA at Nassau. I think it's more because of discipline and time management. But, for me, Nassau was a great place to start. I got my associates there, then I went to Northeastern. I got my bachelor's in criminal justice and minor in political science. And then I had a 10-year gap between my bachelor's and first master's, because at that point in time, I was just ready to start my Army career.
Sure.
I was just ready to get going, especially after 9/11, And then, after about 10 years, so basically once I promoted myself out of the cool stuff in the Army, so once I wasn't like the shooter anymore in Special Forces, and then I got more in the strategy game, so I kind of embraced the academic side. So, I did business and organizational security management through Webster, and then defense analysis at the Naval Postgraduate School, which is essentially foreign policy, which was an outstanding program.
Yeah.
And then I have a international security grad certificate from Stanford, an international relations grad certificate from Harvard. And then I was just doing kind of like classes here and there, stuff I found interesting. So like psychology and leadership was from Cornell. That was an excellent class. A lot of psychology and persuasion, so stuff that is helpful for this congressional run. I knew I needed like a more economic background, so I did global business and politics from Yale. Okay. So stuff like that. I just have a growth mindset. I learned, and then I was my goal was when I retired to get into Harvard. So that was one of the reasons I was doing classes, and I'm writing 3 books. So,
Yeah, talk to us about
I
that.
was doing the knowledge to get to the book. So,
Yeah.
so thank you. So the books, I kind of came up with an idea, like a system, just before the millennium. I was in college, and the millennium fever. So I kind of like, I wouldn't say an ideology. I would say an actionable philosophy. So. So the 3 books, one is kind of how to determine your purpose and accomplish your goals. So, that's, like your purpose, your strengths, weaknesses, talents, passions, stuff like that. Self-reflection, what is a person really capable of? What do you want?
Yeah.
Historical idols. And then once you kind of have an idea of that, then you have to plan, you have to organize, network. So, who do you have to learn from? And then you have like the will, the discipline side. So, kind of like the apprenticeship phase, you have to develop your skill set and the work ethic, and then you have to execute your plan, and then every action has a reaction. You have to resolve, to accomplish your goals and overcome setbacks. And then, in that same framework, I've been able to do kind of like the individual philosophy side, and then the strategic side. So that's kind of like how to create resources or how to accomplish stuff strategically. And then the other one's just like kind of psychologically. So that's like mindset and agency. So, by me writing this and studying this for decades, it's kind of been passion of mine. So like, my book will be the legacy, but it certainly will make me a better candidate, as I write this. So it's kind of all 3, are works in progress. I'm hoping to have the first one done, in the next couple of months. But it's it's good. It forces me to learn and become a better person. And I know we were talking about, so I've studied great leaders, where it started out militarily great leaders, Alexander, Napoleon, General Patton, and then it was political leaders, and then now it's like entrepreneurs and game changers. So I kind of study it all. I try to take bits and pieces, because it's that I want to be the best leader I can for the people of the district.
Sure.
So that's my goal.
Yeah. And now it kind of almost seems like a natural progression. What do you hope to then achieve as far as like, you get into office and whatnot? Will you be there for the term limits? Will you continue on after that? What are your hopes there?
So I did sign a term limit pledge. So like I said, I kind of started thinking about politics in like 2015 or 16 when I met Tim Kaine, and then that kind of evolved, and then really as the country, I think, has regressed, certainly more divided. I felt like rather than complain, I'm like, I can make a difference. Like I've met people, I've met a dozen congressmen and senators. Like they're nice people, but I quite simply I know I can do a better job than they can. Certainly Santos, that's. To me, it's just really the stars aligned. So, I retired, I accomplished all my goals. I got into Harvard for public administration, so I was thinking about it anyway. I was studying it, and then once I realized Santos was my home district, to me, like the stars kind of aligned.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I feel like I can do a good job, and my ends are just. I'm really just trying to help the people, my friends and family. And then the country's stronger. I try to. The common sense approach, I say that just because the country's just so divided. Where it was interesting at Harvard, there's 435 congressmen, so they kind of mapped everybody. Everybody's either on the far right or far left because they get the most money, they're the loudest people. But it's the people in the center, those are the ones that can get stuff done because you're willing to compromise or reach across the aisle. Like,
Sure.
There are some Republicans that they're all over Speaker Johnson, like, he spoke to the Democrats. Like, if you're not even going to speak to the other side, to me, I don't think you have any business being in government, because it's it's my way or the highway, and it's that's not how to get things done. So I studied leadership and negotiation at Notre Dame. It's just you have your goals, you have to be willing to walk back and compromise, and it's for me, it's if I can get tribes in Afghanistan who hate each other to work together.
Yep.
I think I can get Republican Democrats to at least speak civilly.
Because you not only have the knowledge and the education, but you have the experience, firsthand, and that speaks volumes to be able to have what are, again, opposite ends of the spectrum, the those types of people and being able to have them come, again, having a similar vision.
And I think experience is vital. It's leadership, and there's natural stuff, but you can learn leadership. But it's really just having lived all over the country, overseas, been to war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and then you just see everything, and then it just makes the perspective is so important in politics, because it's you have to represent so many different ethnicities and religions or where they're from, and it's everybody's opinion should be heard, as long as they present it straightforward and respectfully and all that stuff. So I think experience does help a lot, certainly in the leadership aspect when you're trying to represent different types of people. So I've done it from war to helping write strategic plans, to commanding regions, whole of Central America. So it's different problem sets, and it's just interesting, because it's the way you fought in Iraq was different than the way you fought in Afghanistan, just like the way I led in Honduras was different than the way I led in Colombia and Europe. So it's so I do think experience is a vital thing, and it's so the education experience, and it's really just the open mind. It's all about the mindset, the growth mindset, and the psychology. Like, I generally want to hear what people have to say. Like like when I'm running, let's say I don't have children, so like there might be some stuff on, like, say, schools that I might not know about. So then just tell me what you want, or tell me who the players are, and I'll empower them to make, the thing about leadership, especially Congress, you don't have enough time to do everything. You have to empower the people. So it's, give them the resources they need, or the guidance, and all that stuff. And, that's the great thing about special ops, is everybody I work with is a performer. So I think in the political world, where it'll be a little different, because maybe not everybody is a team player. So I haven't experienced that yet, but it's I'm prepared for it. But experience I think is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say drives you, Tom?
It's you have to look at a big picture. I actually write this in my book. So so it's like a legacy. It's like your life it's a journey. And for me, I've been in combat. I've had several close calls, and it's all stuff like that. So I'd say Santos, he lied and stuff just to get in, claim to fame or whatever, but he did it at the expense of his honor and his integrity, and it hurt the people. So for me, it's the big picture. As a politician, I'm not willing to say stuff I don't mean. If I say something integrity-wise, I mean it. Honor is a big deal to me. And then people say, well, how do you prevent corruption? And I think it's it's just taking a big long-term approach, where your reputation. So it's stuff I did 20 years ago helped build me to who I am today, and then when I run for Congress, that will help me be hopefully a better man 10 years from now. But for me, it's I'm ambitious, but it's really more just to represent the people. So for me, to me it's the best job, because I can help the country national security-wise, foreign policy-wise, and then leadership-wise, the hometown. So for me, this really is the best opportunity right now, and I know I can deliver results, and really the goal is not only to to win and help the people, just to make this district one of the most influential in the country. And economically, educational-wise, all that stuff, just for the people to flourish and have the opportunities that I did. I went to public school here. I started at Nassau, and then went to war, and ended up at Harvard, one of the best schools. And I'm happy to be back home, and with my friends and family in New York. So it's
awesome.
So that's my motivation now, is just to give the people of the district the representation. Just Santos. Just get him out of the way, and just kind of do it. And for me, Republican, Democrat, I just want to have the best thing for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's, I don't think, just Republicans or just Democrats. I take an open perspective.
And we're all just trying to live our best lives at the end of the day,
Yeah, that's, for me, it's, like the existentialism, just allow, for people to determine their purpose and kind of pursue that in life, not not be held back, not be oppressed, or and then just have the resources to at least set you up for success.
Totally.
Like I don't think the government should hold your hand for everything, but it's like in the Army, to set the conditions for you to succeed. So I have no doubt that I can, through leadership and compromise and all that stuff, to set the conditions for people on Long Island to succeed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So last question then, Tom. Why is it important to go out and vote?
It's important to vote just because, well, one, a lot of people complain, and in the Army, that's not really my thing. But if you don't vote, you can't complain, or you don't have a voice. So it's, it sounds like a simple thing, especially in New York. Some people will be like, oh, like the Democrats have a stranglehold in the city, so I'm not going to vote or whatever. But it's just, you never know, and you want your vote to count, and just to be part of the process. Then you're kind of more invested. So, my whole thing with leadership, once people are invested and actually have like skin in the game or concerns, they're more willing to help and all that stuff. So, I just say, you had a bad leader, vote, and you can replace it. That's what the system is. Not every leader is going to, not everybody's going to be a great leader, but you just get them out on the next one. So, with this special election, it's, just vote and get out there. Especially when you look at primary special election, the numbers are down. So, I just think, I think it's a responsibility. It's if you want to like try to help things,
make a change.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thanks for being on. Really appreciate you. And thanks for watching Access Spotlight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.